Welcome back, Mindsetters. I'm loving the interaction on the page, especially how you guys are helping each other during this very crucial time. I know some of you are very nervous, but you don't even need to fret because, we're here and that's what we're here for, so that you guys actually know what will happen in your exam and you are prepared for anything. Hey, Aslam.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So guys, I know that there's some questions going. You can keep asking throughout the show. Don't forget that you can keep asking. And I also want to remind you about the winter school. Winter school is coming up soon on the 2nd of July. So you don't need to worry if maybe perhaps you're still not clued up on some of the things. Winter school is here to help you with exactly that. Over to you.
Thank you. Welcome back, guys. We move on to evolution. Before we go there, that one question.
Yes. There's a question Petros asked. What is an allele that is not shown in the phenotype when found in the heterozygous condition?
Listen to that question very carefully of Petros. He wants to know what is the allele that is found in the phenotype of, that is not shown, in the phenotype if an organism is heterozygous.
Yes.
First of all, we must understand heterozygous means what? That the gene and its allele are not the same. They are different, right? That's the first thing. And in this particular case, they want to know in the phenotype, this gene is not showing itself up. Why not? Obviously, this allele would have to be recessive. In other words, in our example of gray and white, we had capital G for gray and small g for white. Now, if these two are put together, that is heterozygous. There's the gene, and there's its allele. So this particular one, the small g, will not show itself in the phenotype. In other words, you cannot have a phenotype where the mouse has gray with white spots on it. You're only seeing either gray or you're seeing white. They are clearly distinguishing characteristics. So the recessive allele will not show itself in a heterozygous condition. I hope that answers your question, Petros. Moving on, we move to evolution, guys. We will, when we have chance again in the winter school, hopefully go back to some of the genetic type of questions. Now we're moving on to evolution, because most of you out there want to know when we're going to tackle some of the paper 2 issues. So we're going to do a little bit of evolution, and then we'll move on to the paper 2 items as well. It says, read the passage below and answer the questions that follow. All types of domestic dogs are capable of interbreeding to produce puppies, which will eventually be capable of interbreeding with any other domestic dog. Notice what I'm doing very carefully. I am underlining keywords. I spoke about this last time, that when you underline these keywords, you get to a stage eventually where you'll be able to do that in your mind. But now, while you're practicing, do it physically if you have to. Even if you have highlighters, use the highlighters also. The first dog evolved from a population of wolves. It is thought that wolves that were tamer than usual adopted humans in order to scavenge food from these refuse dumps near the human settlements. Although wolves look very similar to some breeds of domestic dogs, wolves and domestic dogs cannot interbreed. Very important clues given in this passage. That is why whenever you get a question, whether it's a passage, whether it's a data response, you must, I repeat, you must read very carefully the information before you jump into the questions, because very important clues are given in the diagrams or in the passages. Let's move on. It says, explain why all breeds of domestic dogs belong to the same species. Why all domestic dogs belong to the same species. Now, where does this question come from? It comes from your knowledge of species. What is a species? A species is a group of organisms. One, what do? They share similar characteristics and Characteristic. Wow, my spelling is going to the dogs. Must be all this BB that I'm busy with. I'm just going to abbreviate it there anyway. Characteristics. All right, let me show you. I can spell it. Just now you think I can't spell. Okay, and they have similar characteristics. They can interbreed. And by the way, interbreed does not simply mean they must be able to have sexual relationships with each other. It means they must have sexual reproduction as such. In other words, they must have sexual relationships for producing offspring, interbreed, to breed, to make more offspring. And they produce fertile offspring. Now, can you see, first of all, why I'm writing all this down? And secondly, why I was underlining those important words. Now, the answer is in those important words and the definition. Let's go back. What did they tell us about all domestic dogs? They say they are capable of interbreeding. Obviously, all domestic dogs would share similar characteristics, obvious. That's the first given. Secondly, they told us they are capable of interbreeding. And their puppies are also capable of interbreeding. When we said in our definition, producing fertile offspring, we mean that the offspring, the puppies in this case, must also be able to produce offspring. When organisms of the same species mate and they have offspring, then their offspring can have more offspring. When organisms of different species mate or interbreed and they have offspring, then those offspring, if they do have, are generally sterile. That means they would not be able to have offspring. Classical example is the horse and the donkey giving you a mule. The mule cannot make more mules. So that's what we are talking about here. Describe how a population of wolves may have undergone speciation to form the first population of dogs. Now remember, this is based on the evolution concept of speciation, and they want to know how. Now, again, we were underlining some important words here. They said it here, the dogs evolved from a population of wolves. It is thought that wolves that were tamer than usual adopted humans. So in other words, what we're saying is that originally, this was one population. One population. For some reason, there was, not for some reason, we know why, when we discuss later why there's variety, because of meiosis, because of sexual reproduction, because of mutation, etc. There was variety of variation in the species, in this wolf population. Some were tamer. These tamer ones may have left the pack. Remember, wolves hunt in packs. They have left the pack and moved towards the human settlement. Why? Because they were tamer and they would not want to hunt, so they became scavenging. And while they were there, they got separated. Because they were separated from those other wolves, they could not interbreed with the other wolves. So therefore, they underwent natural selection independently. And again, going back to natural selection is the process whereby organisms that are stronger would survive at a particular time in a particular place. It's not a do or die rule. In that particular time, in that particular place, one species may be stronger than the other, or one variant rather. One variant may be stronger than the other. Go back to your knowledge of the moths in Manchester. When the Industrial Revolution was at its peak, then obviously the darker moths survived. Why? Because they could not be seen according to the theory that goes with it. And therefore the white moths were easily seen and therefore they were eaten. So at that particular time, in that particular area, those moths, the darker variant, were stronger. However, after we became aware about pollution and its effect, and when Manchester cleaned itself up and the Industrial Revolution died down and there was not so much industry, and now that we are using various ways to protect the environment became a lighter shade. Now what happened? A different time, same place, but a different time. Conditions changed, and these conditions that changed favored the white moth. Now the white moth couldn't be seen because the environment was cleaner. It was easier to see the darker moth, so therefore the birds will eat the darker moths, and now the white variant increases. Now the same thing happens here. Natural selection happens, and in this case here now, independently of each other. And these organisms became genotypically and phenotypically different from each other. Now, if we put the wolves and the dogs together, even though they're not separated anymore, we've taken away the separation, we put them together. Now they may not interbreed when put together because they are new species. Now remember, according to the theory, it doesn't happen yesterday and then today all this happens. This is over several generations, long periods of time. Remember, evolution speak about 4.5 billion years, the Earth's life and its history. That's a long time. So please understand that this doesn't happen yesterday, that they got lost and they went their way, and tomorrow when they came back, now they're a new species. No, this is not what these people are saying. They are simply saying that over several generations, the one with this scavenging habit was surviving better in that area, and therefore it arose. The tamer one obviously would be adopted by the humans, and the human would keep the tamer one. The one that's not tame, it's wild, it's going to attack the human, they're not going to keep it there with them. Then they say here, last one here, describe how artificial selection led to different breeds of domestic dogs. Now, we live in a day and age when artificial selection is part of our lives in different ways, not only in dogs, in sheep, in cattle, in fruit, in vegetables, etc. What we mean there is simply that farmers, or in this case, not farmers, but the humans, they saw that certain characteristics are better than others. And because of that, they would then artificially select certain individuals to breed with other similar individuals so that they get a particular favorable characteristic. For example, a dog that looks very nice. For a show, you're taking the dogs for dog shows, etc. It looks very nice. Therefore, they will take that characteristic and enhance it. Or a dog that runs very fast. So they have dog races, they can do the same with that type of thing. So that is what we're talking about. Artificial selection is when humans select certain favorable characteristics and they perpetuate it by mating these animals with similar animals so that the offspring probably have these favorable conditions. Any questions there, Kadleho?
No questions yet on what you're doing right now.
Okay.
Would you like to go for a quick break so that we can get more?
Yep, let's do that.
Okay, sure. Guys, let's go for a really quick break in order for you guys not only to get refreshed, but also to get all your questions in so that we can answer them right after this very quick break.